Well, I'd like to welcome everybody to Issachar Forum, a prophetic think tank. Going to be talking in weekly sound bites once a week on Sunday afternoon by 6 p.m. every Sunday afternoon, and by 6 p.m. Eastern we'll post a video reviewing the week's events, and it'll be available on YouTube. Also, we have a commentary called Elisha Vision Commentary on the internet. It's www.elishavision.wordpress.com, and that's Elisha Vision with an S. And in this kind of introductory video, I just wanted to give a little overview of what we've been talking about really for several years. Issachar Forum has been in existence for, I guess 8 or 9 years now, just about every Sunday night in the Raleigh, Wake Forest area of North Carolina. And it's open to the public. We usually meet in a restaurant and have a lot of opportunity for questions and answers, and we go over news events of the previous week, and then we talk about how they fit into Bible prophecy. Issachar Forum comes from the sons of Issachar, men who understood the times and knew what Israel ought to do. We want to be men and women who understand the times and know what God's people ought to do. That's from 1 Chronicles 12:32, and that's kind of our guideline for what we're trying to do. In this introduction, though, I want to just give a little overview of one of the main subjects we've been talking about for several years, and it's the Psalm 83 war. Psalm 83 is a psalm, and most people think of psalms as comforting, just for comfort, but Psalm 83 is a prophecy, and there are other psalms that are prophecies, but this one is quite specific, and it describes a war in the Middle East that has not been completed. Some can make a good case for the fact that it may have started kind of technically in 1948 when Israel became a nation, and immediately the nation surrounding them invaded and tried to destroy the fledgling baby little nation. And then the same countries pretty much have invaded several times since then. And in 67, the Great Six-Day War, it was just a miraculous victory for Israel. In the 73 Yom Kippur War, also a victory that wasn't possible for Israel without God's help. And on up to the present, smaller attacks. But there's a couple things I want to share about Psalm 83, and then kind of give a viewpoint, a scenario for what I see coming in the future that could affect really the whole world because of this Psalm 83 war. I might say up front also that the Psalm 83 war is distinct from the Ezekiel 38 Gog and Magog war. Many people tend to kind of lump those together, but I'll suggest to you why I think they're separate. First of all, let me just read a couple things. The beginning of this psalm says, "Do not keep silent, O God, do not hold your peace, and do not be still, O God, for behold, your enemies make a tumult, and those who hate you have lifted up their head." The key here is the personal pronouns, your enemies, speaking to God. Your enemies make a tumult. Those who hate you have lifted up their head. They have taken crafty counsel against your people and consulted together against your sheltered ones. And this is a reference obviously to Israel, because God has protected and cared for Israel even through 2,000 years of wandering in exile. God has still kept them as an identity, their identity as the Jewish people. So this psalm identifies that the enemies actually hate God. That's who they're really after. That's who they're trying to fight against. But they can't go up to heaven and get God, so they do the next best thing, and they go after his people. And it says, come and let us cut them off from being a nation, that the name of Israel may be remembered no more. So they're trying to blot out the name of Israel. And you hear that in the news every week or so from Iran. The president or the Ayatollah of Iran keeps saying they want to annihilate all Jews. President Ahmadinejad said one time recently that it's good for all the Jews to be regathered from the world and into one place in Israel, because it'd be easier to kill them all that way. That's what that spirit, that demonic, satanic spirit is all about, that wants to kill all the Jews. And of course, just this past week, the Ayatollah said that he actually advised that genocide was the only answer to deal with the Jewish problem. Sounds very familiar, actually, to Hitler when he talked about the Jewish problem, and his solution was also to kill them all. So anyway, just to get to the main point here, as you go on down in this psalm, beginning at verse 6, it lists the names of the countries that attack. And the names here in the Bible that are used are Edom and the Ishmaelites, Moab and the Hagrites, Gebal, Ammon, and Amalek, Philistia with the inhabitants of Tyre. Assyria also has joined with them. They have helped the children of Lot. Well, those are kind of the ancient names for the lands. But if you put those names and where they were in ancient times, the land area that they controlled, if you put a modern map over that, you're actually talking about Egypt, Saudi Arabia, Lebanon, Syria, and Jordan. The nations just surrounding Israel. We live in an area, a metropolitan area in Raleigh, North Carolina, that has two belt lines, a 440 belt line that circles the city on an inner belt line, and then the 540 belt line that's an outer, larger ring around the city. Many major cities in America have that nowadays. And it makes a good analogy for describing the Psalm 83 war and then later the Ezekiel 38 war, because the Psalm 83 war lists the nations by name, and they're an inner circle of nations, basically the nations that touch Israel physically in Israel's present borders. Those are the nations that will attack in the Psalm 83 war, and they have been attacking over several decades. I believe we're about to the time where the major final battle will take place. Now here's the kind of astounding fun fact, you might say, is that when Israel is attacked in this final battle of the Psalm 83 war, I believe Israel is going to win, only with God's help. And when they win, they will then expand their borders from the river of Egypt to the great river Euphrates, which is the borders that God promised to Abram in Genesis 12. So that will be fulfilled, I believe, as a result of the Psalm 83 war. Then Israel will control all that land. And then as you go over to Ezekiel 38, and I'll just conclude with this, in Ezekiel 38, interestingly, it also lists countries by name. It lists Persia, which is Iran. It lists Put, which is Libya. It lists Ethiopia, which is modern-day Sudan. It's a little confusing because there is a modern-day Ethiopia, but that's not the one in the Bible. The modern country is Sudan. And also then it mentions Turkey and some of the other nations in the southern steppes of Russia, the stands as they're called. Those are the nations listed in Ezekiel 38, the so-called Gog and Magog war, and that's kind of the big one. That war does not mention, that passage in Ezekiel 38 and 39 does not mention Egypt, Saudi Arabia, Jordan, Syria, and Lebanon, or Gaza and the West Bank and the Philistines and Palestinians. So I believe that war of Psalm 83 is about to take place any day now or within a year or two, sooner rather than later. And then I believe there will be a time of relative peace and then another build-up in the future to the Ezekiel 38 war. So while I do believe that we're in the last generation, I don't think Jesus is coming. He could come before breakfast because we can always be wrong about our prophecies, but I believe there are certain things that are going to happen first, and then when Jesus comes back, that'll be the final conclusion. So, and by the way, I've written a book called Generation Last, and I encourage you to check that out. It's on our blog site, and I'll just mention that one more time. It's elishavision.wordpress.com. Now, I invite you to watch these videos as we post them from week to week, just on the current events. This is kind of an overview, but from week to week we'll talk about the current events in our Issachar Forum, a prophetic think tank. Thank you for tuning in. Bye-bye.